Changhua, Philippines, Tzu Chi volunteers traveled to Palo of Lyete Province to understand disaster survivors' needs. We investigate how toxic waste in Taiwan's Changhua is affecting nearby lands and streams. Welcome to DaAi Headlines. I'm Helen Liao. Thank you for joining us. First up in the Philippines, as today's short-term relief work comes to an end in the city of Tacloban, volunteers next make their way south to Palo to assess the damage there. Tzu Chi volunteers say they hope to provide necessary assistance to those affected by the disaster as soon as they gain approval from the local government.
40 minutes south of Tacloban City is the municipality of Palo. Communities here were severely damaged by Typhoon Haiyan.
Ilang pamilya hawak mo dito?
Bali, ang pamilya namin dito ay 309.
Bahay mo to. Ngayon, bahay niyo na ngayon.
This simple tent set up along the roadside is in fact the home of the head of Barangay Candac. Tzu Chi volunteers listen intently as the borough head speaks of the situation in her neighborhood. Barangay Candac originally had 1,877 residents, of which 164 died during Typhoon Haiyan. Approximately 10% of the houses have collapsed. Thus, over the past month, many residents have had to live in tents. Though charity organizations establish short-term cash for work programs here, however, most residents have used up their pay on rebuilding their home.
Some charity organizations came to carry out cash for work programs, but only for 15 days. After they left, we have no idea what to do.
15 days lang. Nung magsialis na ka sila.
The owner of this convenience store spent half a month to find lost items and put together a new storefront before reopening for business.
Pero hindi pa rin totally na.
We are doing better now, but we haven't fully recovered. Life is still tough. What we make is only enough to cover our daily expenses. We are still struggling.
Makaraos lang.
Nearly 2 months have gone by since the typhoon, and without a place to call their home, residents are worried about their future.
If we can work to make ends meet, our lives will be able to return to normal. We won't have to seek help from others and be on the receiving end all the time.
Luckily, Tzu Chi volunteers are here to survey the damage and hope to provide further assistance.
Before we focused our relief efforts on Omak City, and after that we came to Tacloban. Following the end of the first phase of relief work in Tacloban, we are here now in Palo to assess the situation. Next, we hope to get some information from the local government.
Following their visits to local communities, Tzu Chi volunteer Tsai Senghang, along with other volunteers, visits the local authorities. Once Tzu Chi gains approval from the government, Tzu Chi volunteers will assess what assistance to provide to the residents of Palo.
At one of the distribution held last weekend at Lei Normal University in Tacloban of the Philippines, 38-year-old Okina Guerrero celebrated his birthday, which happened to fall on the same day as the event. Guerrero said receiving Tzu Chi's consolation cash was the best birthday gift of all. And facing a downpour, Tzu Chi volunteers warmed the hearts of residents lining up at the venue by handing out blankets to keep everyone warm.
On December 29th at Lei Normal University in Tacloban City, a sudden downpour took residents waiting for Tzu Chi's aid distribution by surprise. Tzu Chi volunteers quickly hand out blankets to keep everyone warm. With 6 aid distributions to be carried out across 2 different venues, Tzu Chi volunteers are bringing love that is creating a ripple of goodness in residents' hearts.
This is a great blessing for us. You really helped us a lot.
I'm going to buy necessities with this money, like a new roof and nails.
As volunteers hand over the consolation cash with respect, they are not only extending Master Zhenyan's blessings, but also the love of Tzu Chi volunteers worldwide.
Coming here, you've really helped us a great deal. If you had not come to Tacloban, we wouldn't have been able to clean up our neighborhood.
The distribution venue may be packed. However, each of the residents on site feel the warmth of Tzu Chi, while the volunteers themselves relish in the joy of giving. Okina Gerardo lives in the city center of Tacloban, and as he leads Tzu Chi volunteers to his home, our DaAi TV reporter nearly tripped over the debris that still clutters the roads. Typhoon Haiyan destroyed the second story of Gerardo's home and left the ground floor tilted and no longer safe to live in.
When the typhoon came, I told my wife and child to stay in the temporary shelter, and I would stay at home to look after our belongings. I stayed till the water subsided.
Following the disaster, Gerardo's family of 3 had no choice but to live in a tent set up in his friend's living room.
It would be great if we could rebuild our home and replace all the broken items with new ones.
As the day of the distribution happens to be Gerardo's birthday, his wife cooks a meal to celebrate. Nonetheless, what makes the man most happy is being able to meet Tzu Chi on this day.
I'm truly happy to be able to receive this help from Tzu Chi. I'm just overjoyed.
Having received Tzu Chi's consolation cash on his 38th birthday, Gerardo promises the volunteers to make good use of the money to rebuild his home.
Following Super Typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines, to help Tacloban residents return their lives to normal, the local government has started plans to build 1,200 prefabricated houses around the disaster zones. However, without an exact date on when these houses will be finished, many disaster survivors have decided to rebuild their homes with the limited funds available to them. Right now over here, workers are speeding up the process of the building of government-commissioned prefabricated housing. Disaster survivors will only be able to live in these homes for 2 years, and all the buildings are made out of wood. Let's go inside to see how big the homes are. Each home accommodates a family in an area that is less than 10 square meters. To help those devastated by Super Typhoon Haiyan, the Department of Public Works and Highways in the Philippines has started building prefab housings around the disaster zones. In this area, 14 units will be built, with each unit holding 24 homes. Residents will be sharing a bathroom and no kitchen will be included.
They are rushing it up because they wanted to transfer the evacuees from the evacuation center to here.
When?
We do not know the schedule.
When will the construction of these prefabs be complete, and who will be able to live in them? Without the patience to sit and wait for answers to these questions, many locals have started rebuilding their homes on their own. In the aftermath of the disaster, corrugated iron sheet prices have skyrocketed to about $6 per sheet.
The cost of workers, transportation and oil, the prices of everything has gone up. That's why the price of corrugated iron sheet is higher than before.
Despite the hike in the price of these building materials, local residents know that they are the easiest way to rebuild their homes. This is Nestor Centellas, whose home was left roofless following Typhoon Haiyan. Today, he is purchasing 14 corrugated iron sheets and 6 wood battens to fix his damaged roof.
My aunt works for the city government, and she gave me about $113 to purchase building materials.
However, will these wood houses withstand the power of another typhoon?
It depends on our God, because somehow we do not know what to do. What is different priority first? What first we have to fix? What first we have to do? Because somehow we cannot only. We were like crazy.
Looking at the destruction left by Typhoon Haiyan, although many disaster survivors are starting to rebuild their homes, they still do not know when their lives will return to normal. Although it has been almost 2 months since Typhoon Haiyan struck the Philippines, the Tzu Chi Foundation has continued to help those devastated by the disaster. On December 29th, Tzu Chi volunteers held their last relief distribution of the year in Tacloban City and were joined by the city mayor. Meanwhile, the volunteers also traveled to various neighborhoods to gain a better understanding of residents' needs. This is the scene at Tzu Chi's last aid distribution in Tacloban City before the New Year. Among the attendees is none other than the city's mayor. Inspired by Tzu Chi's spirit, the mayor happily joins the volunteers in prayer and helps canvass for donations.
Tzu Chi Foundation is the only foundation I know that's giving outright cash to the people. and that will also help jumpstart the economy, and it will also now give the people some sense of security and make them feel better, since most of them have lost almost everything.
After the relief distribution, the volunteers take a chance to discuss with the mayor possible future collaboration.
If you have the land for us to put up.
According to the mayor, the central government has already started plans to rebuild certain areas of the city. However, there is still not a clear answer as to whether the coastal areas can be rebuilt or not.
I have recommended that some of the areas allowed to build, but no dwelling, meaning non-residential, but you can still build. Like we can build a park, we can build a stadium, or we can build even public restrooms, but definitely no dwelling.
Next, Tzu Chi volunteers traveled to Barangay 100 to conduct a disaster assessment, where they encountered many residents that had received Tzu Chi's assistance previously. Among the recipients is this man who's using the money from the cash forward program to build a temporary home.
I am very happy. My Christmas wish is fulfilled because all of my family members are safe and sound. Now we have a new home. Thank you, Tzu Chi Foundation, for your assistance.
To make sure those that have yet to receive help can also have a roof over their heads, Tzu Chi volunteers travel from barangay to barangay to find a suitable location for the construction of Tzu Chi's prefab housings.
市长今天早上跟他开会呢。
We had a meeting with the city mayor this morning, and he said that the city needs about 20,000 prefabricated houses. We asked him to take us to suitable building sites. If the locations are okay, we will deliver the information to Master Zheng Yan.
Knowing the hardship disaster survivors are going through, Tzu Chi volunteers are trying to find a suitable building site as quickly as possible so residents can once again have a place to call home. For our next report in Taiwan, we follow environmental inspectors' footsteps as they travel to Changhua to investigate the report that local electroplating factories have used hidden pipes to discharge toxic waste into nearby streams, and also to learn how the government plans on imposing stricter punishment to fight such criminal acts.
This rainwater is electroplating wastewater that contains high levels of acidity. It comes from an electroplating factory that has used hidden pipes to secretly discharge it into nearby streams.
These underground pipes are connected to a nearby canal.
Digging out the cement, you will find a huge secret pipe through which the untreated wastewater is discharged into the nearby irrigation system. That irrigation canal is colored black, green, and red, all sorts of colors. Nearby farmland is barren and cannot grow any crops.
Over the years, 10 electroplating factories in Changhua have secretly discharged heavy metals and cyanide into local water system.
As the wastewater contains cyanide, comes acid and will produce hydrogen cyanide. The factories normally release the wastewater at midnight or on rainy days.
Using radar, inspectors of the Environmental Bureau find the location of hidden pipes. Dozens of containers used to store hazardous substances were also discovered.
If they were unable to discharge the toxic waste, they store it in containers instead.
The toxic wastewater polluted 270 hectares of farmland.
Underground water is used by farmers to irrigate their rice fields. However, we found the rice has been polluted by heavy metals. So we strongly suspect that the factories dumped their toxic wastes into the underground water system.
Environmental inspectors say if toxic wastes are discharged into underground water networks, it is not only hard to trace the source of toxic substances, but also extremely hazardous to the biological ecosystem of the area. So why do these businesses take the risk of being punished instead of treating their wastewater properly?
To treat wastewater requires extra investment and it is pretty costly. Facing a competitive business environment, these companies rather ignore the law.
In the past, environmental protection authorities only gave unethical companies fines, which did little to deter them from continuing their dumping. However, in 2005, following the enactment of the Administrative Penalty Act, offenders became subject to stricter fines.
Now, the punishment for the offenders is not limited to $20,000. As long as we can confirm the time frame of the violation, we can levy fines based on their illegal gains during that period of time.
Over the past 5 years, Taiwan's EPA has discovered 28 polluters and imposed fines of up to $29 million. The EPA also recently fined 4 electroplaning factories in Changhua $5.7 million, and the ASE's K7 factory in Kaohsiung $3.7 million. Other than fines, unethical enterprises will also be subject to prosecution.
According to the Water Pollution Control Act, Article 36, offenders are subject to criminal penalties.
Only through stricter punishments will enterprises realize that exploiting the loopholes of the laws gain them nothing but more trouble.
In 2009, Typhoon Morakot, one of the deadliest typhoons to hit Taiwan, brought 3,000 millimeters of rain in just 3 days. Torrential rains and subsequent landslides washed over 1 million tons of logged down mountains and into the sea. The impact this had on Taiwan's coastlines was unprecedented. Today, we take a look at how this driftwood has impacted the marine ecosystem along our shorelines, as well as what is being done by the Forestry Bureau to strengthen their management in this area.
In 2009, Typhoon Morakot not only brought destruction to man, torrential rains and subsequent landslides washed a huge volume of wood from mountains into rivers, where it accumulated in riverbeds.
These driftwood logs were carried by river currents out to sea, where they then became stacked up on the seashore. Take Morakot for instance, the massive amount of uprooted trees impacted approximately 83.2% of Taiwan's coastline. 52 harbors were affected because the logs blocked waterways of cargo ships and fishing boats.
Not only did these logs impact fishing and shipping lanes, they also harmed marine life.
In the aftermath of Typhoon Morakot, coral reef coverage in and around Kendin decreased from 50% to some 20%. These driftwoods in the ocean are threatening the survival and growth of coral reefs.
Taiwan's forest law stipulates that local governments have 1 month to clean out any wood that has been carried outside the boundary of the national forest after a natural disaster, after which local residents may collect freely the remaining wood. For residents of Pingtung's Lemay Island, driftwood has become an important part of their livelihood. During the northeast monsoon season, logs are carried by the tide where they end up in Taipei's Sanju River. A lover and collector of driftwood, Wang De-yu often looks for hidden treasures by the seaside, as extremely rare and valuable tree species can be found among the logs.
Sometimes we have to check inside to determine what tree type it is, otherwise they all look the same. This is also a Formosum cypress, so I often say every 3 steps you take, you will find a Formosum cypress. This is first-class wood, the Formosum cypress.
Although driftwood is considered precious in the eyes of artists and residents, the large volumes of logs in the oceans not only affect coastal environments, but also warn of the severity of soil erosion in the mountain regions.
Proper governance of slope lands will make a difference. However, with climate change, we are experiencing heavier rains. I guess we will continue to experience natural disasters of this magnitude in the future.
巨大的事件还是可能会持续发生。
It takes decades to nurture a tree. However, it's just a matter of seconds before a tree is uprooted and becomes driftwood. As disasters are becoming ever more frequent and more devastating in magnitude, perhaps this is nature's warning to man to be more humble and to live in harmony with nature.
In Quanzhou, Fujian Province, China, Tzu Chi volunteers held another winter aid distribution for care recipients. During the distribution, volunteers also offered to wash the hair of seniors, an extra touch that warmed the hearts of many. One 82-year-old care recipient also brought a note of thanks to express his gratitude for the volunteers' continuing care and attention.
As Taiwan Tzu Chi volunteers arrive at the distribution site, they hear Southern Min being spoken, a dialect similar to the one they speak themselves. Many Taiwanese residents, in fact, can trace their roots back to the Quanzhou area. At the winter aid distribution, one 82-year-old senior brings a handwritten letter of thanks. Like visiting family members, Tzu Chi volunteers head home with the senior. When the senior's wife hears the volunteers are from Taiwan, she can't control her excitement. It is rare that these seniors have guests that come calling, not to mention ones from so far away. Although Fujian has grown economically, there are still many impoverished corners. Thus, Tzu Chi volunteers have worked hard to bring their care to those that need it. Tzu Chi not only provide recipients with aid supplies for the winter, but also a touch of love. Working in the haircut area voluntarily, Bidu says it was Tzu Chi that showed her the error of her ways.
It's been several years since I have addressed my mother-in-law, 20 years at least. It was after I absorbed the master's dharma that I really repented for my past behavior.
Also repenting is Tai Qing-zhi, who has not shown her father love in years.
I really need to learn from the Tzu Chi sisters. I haven't called my father Dad in a while.
Last year, Chen Jiajia received much joy from helping seniors carry bags of rice and vowed to return again this year.
I don't feel like I'm giving. Instead, I'm receiving warm smiles that deeply move me.
While this year marks the first for Yang Shaowei and his wife.
I felt impulsive. I wanted to rush over to help people lift their bags of rice.
I felt much by being here. There's so many aid supplies and it's all going into the hands of those in need.
After recipient Shi Tian'en received his aid supplies, he stayed on to help break down cardboard boxes.
Life is short. I don't have many years left.
Seizing the moment to reciprocate in these winter days, acts of kindness warm the heart.
We stay in China at the end of the show. At the year-end blessing ceremony held at Guangdong, Shenzhen, Tzu Chi volunteers thoughtfully set up a childcare center so parents could attend their ceremony free of worries. Meanwhile, a volunteer also shared with participants the changes her daughter has made after joining Tzu Chi. We will leave you with these images. Happy New Year. Goodbye.